Marianne.
Hello, Françoise.
Could you briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Marianne, living in Luxembourg, but of Belgian origin, and practicing law as an occupation, professional occupation.
I would like to ask you your experience as cancer survivor.
Sure.
Could you briefly explain us when you got the diagnosis and your experience as a survivor?
Yes, absolutely. So I was diagnosed with cancer, a brain tumor, in March 2008, so almost 15 years ago. Very, well, life-changing experience, right? I had to go through a few exams, MRIs, checked with a few doctors to make sure that there was indeed a tumor in the brain. Afterwards, once the diagnosis had been confirmed, had surgery and had my tumor almost entirely removed. So I only needed to have a surgery to get treatment, and then I was done, so to speak, except for the yearly MRIs or PET scans, or both types of exams that I had to have been taking ever since to make sure that everything stayed stable up there.
Under control.
Yes.
So when you ended the treatment, was the right to be forgotten already in place?
No, which I learned recently, because when I was diagnosed and had my treatment, no one ever even talked about it. I'm not even sure it existed for social media.
No.
I'm not even sure social media existed back then, but that's another story. So it wasn't implemented in Belgium when the treatment finished.
Actually, it was not implemented nowhere, because the first country who implemented it was in 2016 in France. How the situation of your surgery did affect your personal or professional life?
So it's a good question. My professional life, it didn't affect it at all, because except for the law firm who I was working for when I was diagnosed, I didn't say that I had a cancer when I changed jobs. So I didn't want to expose myself, so to speak. The story is very different from my personal life, right? Because I was diagnosed in 2008, got married in 2009, and then we waited a few years until we wanted to buy a house. And that's where, the story came back, so to speak, because when we wanted to get a loan from a bank to help us purchase the house, that came with the very strong recommendation. I don't know if it was mandatory at the time, but it was strongly recommended or expected from the banks that we get an insurance as a collateral to the loan. And that came with a questionnaire, quite detailed, with a lot of questions, one of which was, have you been diagnosed with a serious disease or a cancer in the past? No end date to the question. And there was also a question, are you receiving radiological types of exams, such as MRIs, in the past few years, I think, or in the past year? In my case, both answers to those questions were yes. And so that's where we started having a quite unpleasant conversation with the banker to tell him, look, something happened in Marianne's history that was already 6 years ago back then. And we are afraid that we will not get the insurance. And so the answer was, okay, but then the loan is going to cost you much more than it would have been if you had insurance. And so we had to, I was lucky that I had a husband and his colleagues who stepped in, and the law firm for which Jean-Philippe, my husband, was working for back then, called the bank and said, if you don't give them the loan at normal rates, you lose us as well as clients. And that was the first experience. We ended up getting the loan with normal conditions, but a conversation that I think someone who is not a cancer survivor would have had. The problem happened again That was in 2014. 3 years later, when we moved to Luxembourg and decided to buy a house then, the same very strong recommendation to have an insurance with the same questionnaire, with the same questions, and the story repeats itself. And in that other case, what we had to do is not take the insurance, but put ourselves, and in this case, my husband and family had to help a much higher amount of money to get the loan, to get the bank to grant us the loan. And to this day, I'm still reimbursing family and my husband, who had to step in and help us out, make that purchase in 2017. So that was 9 years after my surgery and the treatment was finished.
9 years after?
Yes. Surgery 2008, first purchase in 2014 and second in 2017.
Now, the right to be forgotten has been implemented in various countries, actually in 6 countries. What does it mean for you as a cancer survivor?
For me, personally, in my immediate situation, not much yet. And that's because I haven't been confronted to again having to discuss with a financial institution. However, I find it's incredible sign of hope and support for cancer survivors who are going through what I have gone through in the past, and who have to have those conversations today to buy a house or to get an insurance. So it's an incredible improvement in the situation, I would say, because being diagnosed with cancer, it's a deeply traumatizing news, right? And when your treatment is over and your doctor tells you year after year, everything's fine, you're stable, I'll see you next year, and it even becomes a joke because I used to visit my neurosurgeon around Christmas, so I always bring a box of chocolate, and he that has become a thing between us. But then, when you have moved on in your life, which means you want to buy a house, and you have to be reminded again of what happened to you, then I felt like I had to pay twice for being sick, which was not my fault in the first place, but then I felt I was penalized for being sick, and it was already an event that was hard enough to overcome from a personal perspective without having, in addition to that, to fight, to basically, be able to do what everybody else can do easily when they want to move on with their lives and build a home for themselves.
Without discrimination.
Exactly.
Yes. That is the very important point. Avoid discrimination.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much for everything that you do for us, because if you weren't there, I don't think the right to be forgotten would be there. So extremely grateful for everything that you have done, Françoise.
Thank you.